Hi guys, this is Robin with Weight Loss Apocalypse. This short clip of a session is about the HCG protocol. This client, like many of you, has had incredible success losing weight with the HCG protocol. And with that success in weight loss came an increased need to restrict and diet. And she lost enough weight doing the protocol, and she was very strict with the protocol, that each time she lost weight, her need to restrict food increased. And as she got more and more attention, where people were very proud of her for losing the weight, the more she felt better about herself with her weight loss, the more she became fixated with dieting. And she was very obsessed. She became very obsessed with low carb ketogenic. She did gluten-free. She did all of those things because she was trying to hold very tightly to the success in weight loss that she experienced with the HCG protocol. Unfortunately, as you might predictably have maybe experienced yourself, as you become more and more restrictive with food, the actual issues with emotional eating and disordered eating and even eating disorders can blow up. And so as she continued to restrict sugar and starches, she eventually had become more obsessed about getting them. And she was eating and binging and hiding, all the while feeling bad about herself and feeling the incredible pressure to try to re-lose whatever weight she was gaining. Ultimately, she not only has she regained the weight she lost and then re-lost some with another round and then regained and then re-lost and regained, she is now larger than she has ever been. So she is larger now after doing the HCG protocol successfully than she has ever been. This client came to me a year ago on her hands and knees, wanting help to somehow get out of the situation. She clearly wanted to lose the weight and get back to her thinness that she felt so proud and had so much pride in, but she didn't want to continue to have to suffer with such extreme restrictions and binging issues. This clip is basically a conversation where we're discussing this history. And we're kind of giving you an eye into the work that we did around not just her body image issues. Many of you who have been following me are very aware that a lot of the focus is on body image, on what you expect from your body, thin supremacy, and how that body image has impacted how you feel about your weight, which ultimately drives you to diet. We, in this discussion, talk about what her and I have actually been working on, which is the consequence, the unintended consequence of that dieting, which is this emotional relationship with eating that is bigger than it would have been otherwise. So, and how she used food, because she deprived food, how food became her reward if she felt like her life wasn't working the way she wanted it to. So we talk about the codependency with dieting that creates the ability for someone to have these extreme relationships with food that otherwise wouldn't be there. And how she had this consistent victim position, and we could get to the heart of the actual emotional issues with food. So the work that what you're getting to see is kind of a very, very simple understanding of the work that I've done, and also how I truly believe the protocol can be used. So she is now currently on her second week of the very low calorie protocol. And this is her also talking about in the whole video, in the whole session that you don't have access to. We talk about, how different this round is, how different her need for weight loss is, etc. So first off, if you want to watch this whole session, I post all of my current YouTube videos in this private Patreon account. You will need to become a member. It's $5 a month, and you have access to all of my most recent YouTube videos. Secondly, if you have been that person that has at one point experienced the miraculous physical rewards of the protocol, and you too found that the anxiety about regaining the weight after the fact created this incredible anxiety around food and the need to go towards stricter and stricter measures, and ultimately ended up with these excessive eating issues, and you too have regained the weight and carry the embarrassment and the guilt and the shame of regain, I can work with you. I can help you if you're open to it. I don't believe you have to do the HCG protocol. This client didn't have to do this. But it's become something that I have found to be very helpful so that people can understand really where they're at emotionally, not just with food, but with their body image. So enjoy this clip. If you would like to work with me, a link to my website is below. Fill in the information request form, and I'd be more than happy to help you. Okay. So you and I have been working together for a while. You've how many rounds of the HCG protocol have you done in total?
Probably 10, 8 or 10.
And you've had,
I don't even know anymore.
And you've had tons of success while on the protocol, lost a substantial amount of weight to the point where you became the thin, righteous health example for us all, right?
Yes, I did.
And that didn't last, which sucked for you because you'd put so much pride in it that you experienced the shame of failure when you couldn't manage your own healthy restrictions, binging in the closet, not wanting people to know that you're healthy, gluten-free, dairy-free, or whatever it was you were following, right? What was your main, like, health, diet, righteous program?
Low carb.
Okay, low carb, righteousness, binging on carbs as you go out and say, look, I don't need carbs, I feel great.
Right.
Anyway. And then as you felt the need to restrict more and more and more, you ended up binging more and more and more, feeling even more shame, gaining the weight back, isolating yourself because you were embarrassed about coming out of the closet as the most amazing, thin example of success, right? Anyways,
yep.
So we've been working for a year now. You came to me after regaining all of the weight, correct?
Correct.
Did you gain more in the end than you did prior to starting the protocol?
Oh, yes.
So you got bigger after the HCG protocol. Bulimia. I want to say it's not the protocol, it's the bulimic use of it. Plus the extreme zealot restrictions to manage the weight that the protocol lost for you. How that impacted that impulsivity to eat and the shame of the regain. So you ended up being, what was your highest weight?
I don't even know because my highest weight would have been before I started this protocol, and I don't even know what it was.
Do you know what your size was?
Like probably an 18 to 20 jeans and XL to 1X top.
Okay. And how tall are you?
5'11".
Okay. So it doesn't really matter, but getting there was not easy. Wouldn't you agree?
No.
And then the work that we've done has not been focused on your food at all, more so your issues with the entitlement, the victim position with life, how your life expectations created this feeling of, constant loss when reality would show up. Anyway, so we had to really work at the underlying issue before we decided, and I actually presented this round to you, and you were like, over it, I'll never do that again. And I had said, well, because you're now on another round of the HCG protocol. However, so the question is, after all this work, after accepting you'll never be thinner, after accepting that if you lose weight, you're going to gain it all back, and letting go of the thinnerness and accepting the body at the fattest it's ever been, the largest it's ever been, right? I present to you this HCG protocol, and not only did you have to separate yourself from body image in terms of fatness and thinness and everything in between, but you've also had to really look at how you related to food dysfunctionally, because you've always relied on a diet to fix your body. And when we got rid of dieting to fix the body, and we had to go right into then where that dieting enabled you to have these issues. Instead of issues, let me use a different word. The dieting gave you an escape from taking responsibility for the way that you used food to compensate yourself for feeling shitty about your life. Whether it's I'm overworked, I'm caretaking for my parents, my husband, and I'm pissed at my husband, or something. You were volunteering at church and felt overworked there, right? I mean, there's all these things that you felt that I deserve to eat, and that relationship with food was only there under a diet enabler.
Absolutely.
So by getting rid of the diet, by having to force you to be accountable, responsible is a better word, don't you agree? To take responsibility for not just the response of poor me, for actually changing the way you perceive the world, correct?
Right. Yeah.
Would you agree that change of perception around what do you expect if you continued to feel victimized? I remember there was a string of about 4 or 5 sessions where that's all we talked about. And that was all you kept on. We'd talk and I'd be like, you're playing the victim. Here we go again. Let's have the same conversation over and over again.
Yeah.
And it clicked for you at some point that I can no longer fantasize. I cannot hold a fantasy of life and then compare reality to that fantasy and judge reality, when reality is going to be what it is, no matter how much you want to fantasize, and no matter how much you actually work to attain the fantasy. That fantasy may not be you're not as controlling of that fantasy as you think. There's all these other dynamics that can come into play, like someone's going to quit their job, that an employee's going to quit. You can't control whether they stay or quit. The weather you cannot control, right? You cannot control. Yeah. In fact, the majority of everything, it's an illusion to think that we can control the outcome of something unless we live in a vacuum, right? Live in that isolation from any influence, correct? So you had to sit there and go, shit, I have to let go of my fantasy of the way I think my family should work, the way that my work should work, the way that my body should work, how a marriage works, how I'm going to be dealing with my grandchildren, right? There was so much that you just had to surrender your control of and go into the humility and modesty of acceptance, right? Diminishing that narcissism.
Yep.
From there, the entitlement and the need to compensate just goes away naturally. So we don't have to work on your victim role, right?
Right.
So that's kind of it in a nutshell that we worked on. And then after that, our sessions were like, this is so easy. This is so great. Holy shit. There was really no movement. And that's why I said, well, let's make it hard for you. We're going to make this complicated now and see how you do. Right?
Yep.
So let's get rid of your food and see if you can create relative abundance with very little. We're going to diminish your food intake to such a small amount that anything might tip you. Anything might feel victim-y, right? So if you've learned to change your perception in an environment, especially with food, being that food is so primal, right? Are
Yeah.
you capable of diminishing that primal response to feed based on your ability to change your perception? Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Right? So we're going to take an actual primal need and diminish it greatly. And then we're going to see if you can take this same position of abundance, right? Position of, I'm good. I can handle this. This isn't a big
Right.
deal. It's like saying, well, in your brain, you have the option of either saying, I can't handle this. This sucks. My life is just sucky right now. This is too hard. I'm being punished, right? Those positions comparatively compared to this isn't a big deal. It's only temporary. I can all have that stuff later, to where you're reducing the inflammation in the brain, even though the amount of food you have is literal deprivation, deprivation of choice,
Right.
deprivation of the ease of just eating what you want, right? Which is where you lived for
Yeah.
quite some time, and the ability to have relative abundance, where before recovery it was always relative deprivation. I'm being deprived
Yeah.
relative to this stress, relative to the how I hate my body. My body is depriving me, relative to my life, relative to the fact that I have a craving and what I've chosen to eat isn't what I want, relative to I'm bored and need something to do, right? You have this continuous relative deprivation with abundance at your fingertips. So we've kind of flipped this
Yeah.
around. Can you create, or excuse me, you had relative deprivation, yeah, around all this
Yeah.
abundance, creating deprivation out of just that positionality of the victim role in your codependency with the fantasy and life, right?
Yep.
So now we have literal restriction, and you are living in relative abundance. The other thing that this is doing for you, and this is a long answer to why do the protocol. The other thing this is doing for you is handing you what you used to use as a reward under this environment. I'm being deprived, I deserve a reward. I'm sacrificing this food, the pleasure, the ease, and I deserve a reward. So we're handing you what you used to combine dysfunctionally. Dieting and thinnerness used to be married in your mind. You don't diet unless you have
Right.
a reward of thinness. Why else would you sacrifice? And why else would you tolerate this relative deprivation and the protocol, real deprivation, right?
Right.
So
Yep.
as you're creating relative abundance under this circumstance, what happens to the desire or even link to what's going on physically?
It's just not there.
Right? You